Good morning, y'all, and welcome back. So today's an exciting video. Today, me and you are gonna do a little experiment. We're gonna find out, does the position of the fifth wheel plate in the bed of the truck matter? And if it does matter, how does it affect that guy right there handling this guy right here? But before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor, RV Mattress by Brooklyn Bedding, for the continued support of this channel. We recently added a new addition to our family, and we knew we had to make some changes as far as sleeping arrangements go in our RV. Now, when it came time to look for mattresses, we knew we wanted to go with rvmattress.com by Brooklyn Bedding because we have the signature hybrid in our master bedroom for 18 months now. It's actually the RV King. Now, when Brooklyn Bedding reached out to us and said they wanted to partner with us, it was a no-brainer because we knew the quality and the comfort that their beds provided. We told them we would like a queen-size bed, two of them, one for the top bunk and one for the bottom bunk, so we'd have matching beds in the toy hauler section of our RV. Well, rvmattress.com is a Brooklyn Bedding brand known for top-of-the-line comfort and quality, plus their mattresses are made right here in the US and shipped conveniently to you for free. They offer different firmness options, heights, and dimensions, even RV-specific and non-traditional sizes to fit right into your lifestyle. When we were searching for an RV mattress, we actually just needed to fit a certain size. We wanted it to be a queen, but it couldn't be very tall because of the Happy Jack bed system. So we chose the 8-inch model because it allows the Happy Jack bed system to work just fine when picking the beds up into the storage position. They sent us the Dream Foam Essential Memory Foam in the 8-inch model. Now, we've had our RV mattress in our master bed for 18 months now, and we love it because it is super comfortable and it fits into our RV king size area. If it makes you nervous to buy something that you haven't tried, Brooklyn Bedding has a 120-night sleep trial, so you get more than 3 months to make sure that you love it. If you don't, you'll get a full refund. RVmattress.com delivers your mattresses right to your door for free within the US. Plus, it comes rolled up in a box and it's super easy to set up yourself. The best part about all this is that Brooklyn Bedding manufactures their RV mattresses in their own factory in Arizona. That means they're able to use premium materials at a reasonable price for you with no middleman to bring up the cost. We love our RV mattress by Brooklyn Bedding, and I think you would too. If you're looking for a new bed, check out rvmattress.com. You can click the link below or go to rvmattress.com/paving new paths and get 20% off your mattress with the code Paving New Paths. Thank you to RV Mattress by Brooklyn Bedding for sponsoring today's video. All right, guys, so a while back I made a video where I took this truck and that RV and I hooked them up and I took them to a cat scale, and I showed you how to weigh your truck and trailer together, how to weigh your truck by itself, and how to use both of those scale slips to figure out how much that guy weighs, how much this guy weighs, and how much pin weight that RV is putting on this truck. And it was a good video, and a lot of you guys really appreciated it. But I got a lot of questions about that video, which leads me to this video. People were asking, where was your fifth wheel plate when you did all that? Because that would affect the weight you see on this truck. Did you have your airbags aired up or not? Well, I'm actually curious. How would the position of the fifth wheel plate in the bed of the truck affect the weight on the truck? Do airbags actually transfer weight from the rear axle to the front axle? I actually don't know those answers, so I figured we could do an experiment together. The concept today is right now we have our B&W companion hitch set up over the rear axle. So we're pretty much dead on the rear axle. Because I have a B&W companion hitch that's the turnover ball style, I have a lot of adjustability. So not only can my base move 4 inches in the bed, the head can also move 4 inches. So I can actually go 4 inches ahead of the axle and 4 inches behind the axle. I figure we'll go up to the cat scale, we'll weigh it with it over the axle, we'll move it 4 inches ahead of the axle, and then we'll move it 4 inches behind the axle. And then we'll compare the differences between all three positions and whether or not it moves weight around on this truck. Also, we're gonna find out, do the airbags matter? Do the airbags actually transfer weight between the rear axle and the front axle? So we have the RV hooked to the truck. We're getting ready to head to the cat scale. And I wanna take this time to let's make our predictions in the comments below. What do you think the effects of moving the fifth wheel plate in the bed of the truck is gonna have on this truck? I believe there will be no real difference between over the axle and ahead of the axle, but I do believe when it goes behind the axle, it's gonna move a lot of weight from the front of this truck to the rear of this truck. That's my prediction. Also, I'm gonna say it right now, I don't think the airbags are gonna matter. I don't think having airbags, inflated or deflated, will change the weight on this truck. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think's gonna happen, and then we'll talk about it in the end. We're here at the cat scales, and it's important to make sure that your truck and your trailer is set up in the right spot. So we start by making sure our front axle is on the front plate, our rear axle is on the rear plate, and our trailer axle is on the trailer plate. Now, we're gonna get 3 weigh slips right here. We're gonna weigh the truck and the trailer with the airbags inflated. We're gonna weigh the truck and the trailer with the airbags deflated. Then we're gonna go park the trailer and come back and weigh just the truck. So we have the trailer parked and disconnected from the truck. It's important to remember, use your wheel chalks if you're ever doing this, because these RVs will roll off in a truck parking lot. Now we're gonna go weigh just the truck and find out what our baseline numbers are. So how we're doing this all day is we're at a cat scale. There it is, and the number is 2163, and we're using our app. Now, the first time I made this video, I kept hitting first weigh, and some of you guys let me know I was spending way too much money. So I've been doing it today already. If you hit reweigh, it only costs you $3.50 as opposed to $13.50 for the first weigh. You can weigh as many times you want, but always hit reweigh. It only costs you $3.50. Thanks to the viewers out there who told me that, because I actually spent way more money than I needed to the last time I did this video, because I didn't know what the difference was between first weigh and reweigh. We've weighed the truck and the RV together with air in the airbags. We've weighed the truck and the RV together with no air in the airbags, and we've weighed the truck by itself. And now there's some interesting data here. Before we get started, I'm just gonna say, we're gonna use the truck with the RV and air in the airbags as our baseline numbers to figure out how much the truck weighs, how much the camper weighs, and how much pin weight we have. And we'll discuss more about that in a minute, but that's the way we normally pull it, so that's what we're gonna use as our baseline. I'm gonna put the truck, the RV with the air and the airbags on the left side of the screen, and the truck only on the right side of the screen. So now you take the steer axle of the truck, which is 5,160 pounds. This is with the RV hooked up, and the drive axle with the RV hooked up of 8,620 pounds. That gives you a total weight of the truck with the RV hooked up of 13,780 pounds. Now you take that number of 13,780 pounds and you subtract it from the weight of the truck only without the RV hooked up of 9,460 pounds. This gives us a pin weight of this RV of 4,320 pounds. We take the pin weight of 4,320 pounds and we add it to the trailer axle weight of 15,540 pounds, and that gives us the total weight of our RV at 19,860 pounds, which means we are very close to the max capacity of our trailer of 20,000 pounds. Now we have a gross weight of the truck and the RV together of 29,320 pounds. So let's get to the next interesting topic, and that is, with the fifth wheel plate dead over the axle, does having air in the airbags affect anything? And this is something I would have bet money would not have an effect, and it actually did. So let's look at the scale slips. So on the left side of the screen is gonna be with air in the airbags, and on the right side of the screen is gonna be no air in the airbags. And it's very interesting because we did change the weight. For the steer axle, we have a weight of 5,160 pounds with air in the airbags, and deflated, the steer axle changed to 5,140 pounds. So we lost 20 pounds of weight on the front axle by deflating the airbags. Now let's go to the drive axle. So with air in the airbags, it was 8,620 pounds. When we deflated the airbags, our drive axle actually dropped to 8,520 pounds, which means we lost 800 pounds on the rear axle by taking the air out of the airbags. Now this is the one I don't quite understand how this happened, but it did. And just so you know, I didn't move the trailer or the truck. I simply just deflated the bags and reweighed without moving the truck. The trailer actually gained 120 pounds. So we went from 15,540 pounds to 15,660 pounds when we let the air out of the airbags. So we lost 120 pounds on the truck by deflating the airbags, and we gave it to the trailer. That's interesting. I would have bet money that the truck would have got heavier. Now that we've weighed the RV and the truck with the fifth wheel dead over the axle, right here is our center line. That's for our reference. Now we're gonna move the fifth wheel plate 4 inches forward, because we wanna know what over the axle and forward looks like before we move it backwards. We have the B&W hitch flipped forward, so now it's 4 inches ahead of the axle. I was going to show you guys how to do that, but I ran into some problems, and the mechanism that you pull to release the base plate, which is the same mechanism that you use to release the ball if you're pulling a gooseneck, was stuck. And I ended up having to work on it for quite a while to get it to move, just to get the base out of the bed of the truck. Brings up two things. One is maintenance. So I don't know the last time that I've pulled the socket out and lubricated it, and I think that's the problem, because I lubricated it up and got it working and now it's all good. So the next time when we flip it back around, I'll show you guys how to manipulate your base plate. The second thing that brings up is I didn't plan on working on my truck today in a truck stop. As you can see, it's nice and clean right here. And I'm wearing a Paving New Path shirt. Alicia hates it when I ruin these Paving New Path shirts. I can't see the back of it. I'm pretty sure this shirt is now ruined. But the good news is pavingnewpaths.com is now live. And when I get home, I'll be just like you guys. I'll go in there and order myself a new shirt. You guys have just a few more days to head over to our website, pavingnewpaths.com, and get yourself entered to win that 48-volt e-bike by Hemingway. All you gotta do is sign up for our newsletter or get yourself some merch. Now that we've moved our fifth wheel plate all the way forward, it brings up one important thing you must always consider. When you move your fifth wheel plate forward, you run the risk of hitting your cab with your fifth wheel. And the easy way to know if you're gonna have a problem is you take a measurement. So you run a tape measure from the edge of your kingpin to the furthest edge of your RV. So we just took a measurement. From the kingpin to the corner is 52 inches. Now you take your tape measure and you measure from right here on the fifth wheel plate to your cab. And that'll tell you if you're ever gonna hit. Now here's the interesting thing. Our measurement now that we're 4 inches forward is only 51 inches. Well, that's 52. That means if we ever make a 90-degree turn, we're likely to hit the cab corner with the corner of the RV. So that's something you need to take into consideration when you start moving your fifth wheel plate around is, will you hit the cab with your RV if it's too far forward? In this case, we would if we made a really sharp turn. This is what we have. This was our original center line dead over the axle, and now we've moved it 4 inches forward of the axle. You can see we are actually ahead of the axle. We're gonna hook this guy up right here, head back to the scale, and do the same test. We're gonna weigh first with the airbags inflated, and then we're gonna deflate the airbags and weigh again, and then we'll talk about the results. We had the trailer hooked back up, and a good safety talk to have right now is if you're unhooking and hooking your trailer this many times in a parking lot, go ahead and do a pull test every time you unhook, because you got a lot going on. You might forget a step, and it's always safe to go ahead and do a pull test before you go ahead and pull those jacks all the way up. We've weighed the truck with the fifth wheel 4 inches ahead of the axle, with and without the airbags. Now for this first comparison, we're going to compare the 4 inches forward versus the center position with the airbags inflated. On the screen, I'm going to put the original one, with the fifth wheel plate over the center of the axle on the left side of the screen, and I'm going to put the 4 inches forward of the axle on the right side of the screen. When it was center, our steer axle had a weight of 5,160 pounds. When it was moved 4 inches forward, the steer axle gained 100 pounds. Now it's 5,260 pounds. And now for the center position, the drive axle was 8,620 pounds. And when we moved the fifth wheel plate 4 inches forward, the drive axle lost 100 pounds. So now it's 8,520 pounds. The trailer axle remained the same at 15,540, and the gross is still the same, which is good because it means we're not gaining any weight. What does that tell you? That by moving the fifth wheel plate 4 inches forward, we moved 100 pounds from the rear axle to the front axle. So we have the fifth wheel plate 4 inches forward of the center of the axle. And let's talk about what happens with the airbags on and airbags off. I'm gonna put two scale slips on the screen. On the left side is the airbags inflated, and on the right side is no air in the airbags. Now you can see the steer axle went from 5,260 pounds with air to 5,240 pounds with no air. So we lost 20 pounds on the steer axle. The drive axle went from 8,520 pounds with air in the airbags to 8,440 pounds with no air, and we lost 80 pounds on the rear axle. And you can see the trailer axle went from 15,540 to 15,640. So it gained 100 pounds. So it's not quite as drastic as when it was over the center of the axle, but we essentially moved 100 pounds from the truck and gave it back to the trailer by having no air in the airbags. The only thing left to do is to move it behind the axle and see what happens then. We found out what happens when the fifth wheel is over the axle and 4 inches ahead of the axle. Now, we're gonna put everything 4 inches behind the axle. Now I know you don't normally tow in this position, but it wouldn't be a good test without knowing the extreme versions of both ends. Normally you like to have your pin weight on the axle or the head of the axle, but I'm curious, what will it do to this truck when it's 4 inches behind the axle? Now this time I'm gonna try to show you guys how to manipulate your B&W hitch, especially if you have a turnable ball, because there's things to do with the post as well as the base to get it 4 inches back. Hopefully it goes a lot smoother than the first time. Once you have the whole base plate pulled out of the bed of the floor, you flip it over, and this post right here has 4 bolts right there, 4 bolts right there. You take them out, and you rotate this 180. So this post will move that way, and it'll push this whole base plate 4 inches that way in the bed of the truck. Now that we have the post flipped over, we tighten all the bolts back up just hand tight, and then we're going to flip it back over, set it back in the post, get everything situated, then we'll torque everything down and talk about what to do with the A-arms. Now that we have all the bolts torqued down and the base plate is secure, we're going to take these A-arms right here. We have to take them off and flip sides, and then I'll move them from the center line of the axle to 4 inches back. We have our A-arms flipped around, and we have the head plate back on, and as you can see, we are now 4 inches behind center line and 8 inches behind forward. There's the axle, and you can see we're 4 inches back. Now this one is the one I'm most interested about, because I know you don't normally tow behind the axle, but this one might give us the most difference in results because it's so far behind the axle, and it should really affect the front end. I'm curious to see what happens. Here we go, last time on the scale for the day. So we just got done weighing the RV in the truck with the fifth wheel plate moved 4 inches behind the rear axle. Now we're going to compare it to whenever the fifth wheel plate was over the axle. In the center position, the steer axle was 5,160 pounds. With it moved 4 inches behind the rear axle, it dropped to 5,060 pounds. So by moving the fifth wheel plate 4 inches behind the rear axle, we lost 100 pounds on the front axle. Now the drive axle in the center position was 8,620 pounds. And when we moved it 4 inches behind the rear axle, it added 80 pounds for a total of 8,700 pounds. So by moving it 4 inches back, we gained 80 pounds on the rear axle and we lost 100 on the front axle. Now the trailer remained exactly the same. So at the center position and 4 inches back, the trailer axle was still 15,540. And now for some reason it says our gross dropped by 20 pounds. I don't know. I've been trying to park in the same spot every time on the scale. That could just be variations. Essentially, moving it back removed weight from the front axle and gained weight on the rear axle, and the trailer remained the same. So now let's talk about with the fifth wheel plate 4 inches back, with air in the airbags and no air in the airbags. With air in the airbags, the front axle was 5,060 pounds. When we let all the air out, it dropped to 5,040 pounds. So we lost 20 pounds with no air in the airbags on the front axle. Now the drive axle was 8,700 pounds with air in the airbags, and when we lost the air, it dropped to 8,580 pounds. So we lost 120 pounds off the rear axle. Now here's the interesting part. So the trailer went from 15,540 pounds with air in the airbags, and when we removed the air from the airbags, it went to 15,660. So we essentially gained 120 pounds on the trailer axles. And somehow the gross, without moving the trailer, we lost another 20 pounds. So that's interesting as well. I think that's just deviations. But this has been a very interesting test. So we're done here at the truck stop. Well, at least you guys are done. I have to go back there and change my fifth wheel plate to back over the rear axle, and then we're gonna take the camper back to the RV park and park it, and we'll have some follow-up thoughts or final comments on how today's experiment went. So we're back at the RV park and we got everything set back up, and I wanted to come back to you and talk to you about some final thoughts about today's experiment. The fifth wheel plate position in relation to the center line of the axle went about like I expected. The airbags, however, surprised me. They reacted way different than I thought. Let's talk about the fifth wheel plate placement. From our baseline, which was the center of the axle, when we moved it forward 4 inches, we transferred 100 pounds from the rear axle to the front axle. And then the same thing, when we went from center line of the rear axle to 4 inches back, we transferred 100 pounds from the front axle to the rear axle. So we have a total of 8 inches of adjustability, and every time we moved it, we moved weight. Well, roughly it's 25 pounds per inch you move it. Every time you come forward, you move 25 pounds from the rear axle to the front axle, and the same when you go backwards. Every time you go back towards the rear axle or beyond it, you move 25 pounds from the front axle to the rear axle. Now I know most of you guys don't have the turnover ball system, so you only have the puck style. Well, it still works for you. You may only have 4 inches of adjustability, but just know, every inch you go forward, you can move 25 pounds from the rear axle to the front axle, and every inch you go towards the rear axle, you can bring 25 pounds from the front axle to the rear axle. Now, the surprising thing, I did not think that the airbags would be much help on transferring weight. I just thought they were gonna be here to level my truck. Well, I was proven wrong. They actually are useful, and it didn't matter where the fifth wheel plate was. The amount they helped was exactly the same, whether the fifth wheel plate was over the axle, in front of the axle, or behind the axle. When I had air in the airbags, there was roughly 120 pounds more on the truck than the trailer. So without airbags, the trailer is heavier. The airbags will transfer 120 pounds from the trailer to the truck. In every scenario, 20 pounds was on the front axle and 100 pounds was on the rear axle. Before we started this, I actually thought the truck would be heavier with no air in the airbags. I thought that when you let it down and it squatted it, that more weight would be on the truck. It was exactly the opposite. When you let it down, it actually took weight away. When it was aired up to be level, it brought weight to the truck. Is that what you guys thought was gonna happen today? Did you think that the airbags would have such an impact? I actually did not. I'm actually kind of impressed with it, because that means that the airbags, not only are they leveling my truck, they are sharing more weight from the trailer by being aired up, and there is weight actually going to the front axle when they're aired up. So I'm glad you guys were here for me today, and I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Now let me know, is there any other scenarios you guys would like me to try out or to test? Because we can do that. This is fun. I learned some things today. There were some things I thought I knew the answers to, and some things that I didn't know the answers to. Now remember, pavingnewpaths.com is now live, and you can go over there and get yourself some new merch, because I'm going there right now because I ruined this shirt. Also, you have a few more days to enter to win the e-bike from Hemingway. So go over there and check that out. Love you guys. Glad you could be with me today. See you next time.